coming up on this episode of Free Lunch.
I had a tragedy in 2017,
Yeah.
I just always felt like I haven't had actually time to just sit. There were a lot of domestic abuse cases because now you're stuck at home.
I only operate and can exist when I have control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to respond.
I had the S curls in one day, and she was like,
You didn't have the shape up? You wasn't fresh?
I thought I had the shape up.
You thought I had the shape up? I guess not.
But, you see someone that you can really envision your life with, and you make it work no matter what. Because, again, they may not be your first choice, but that may be the right choice for you.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Freestyle Gospel, a.k.a. The Real Free, with another episode of Free Lunch, catching up with my man's blast from the past. Not too far past, but a cool dude nonetheless that I've enjoyed working with, had the pleasure of working with in the past in the school system. Without any further ado, I'm super excited to have my man, Travis Rose, in the building. Give him the hand claps.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for coming in. Anytime it's been a while since I've been able to get or just have like contact with somebody, I haven't talked to them in a while, and then I get them to come into the studio. First, I have to catch up, a little bit, just a little bit, kind of. Because it would be ridiculous. Obviously, if we had time before, the show to do that, probably would have did it off air. But when you got kind of back to back, shows or bookings, whatever, you got to kind of squeeze it in when you can get in. So
you're busy man.
Hey, I'm trying to do some big things here at the studio. But at least for me, it's been because I think the school year where we used to work, Travis and I used to work at the same school, and I think the year that after you left was the pandemic then, right?
The March of 2020, that was the last time we worked together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then we all kind of went home, and then worked from home. That was my last school year. And then, then the pandemic hit. I feel like for many of us, the pandemic just made a bunch of memories or things blurry. About what happened and when the pandemic occurred.
Absolutely.
In my life, and for me, it was really nuanced, really difficult because it wasn't just me trying to figure out how to still do the whole teaching thing from a distance with Zoom or whatever. Excuse me. But then I had my own kids who were sent home. And then now, I had to help them throughout a school day. So it was trying to be both productive and doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my students, but then at the same time trying to also help my own kids at home not fall behind. That was a real nightmare.
I can only imagine. I don't have kids, but
that was tough.
The fact that I didn't feel helpful or I couldn't be helpful talking to kids every day. The same conversation. How you doing? I'm this. I'm not doing anything online. I'm not in person. It was very hard for me to do my job and have a connection still.
Do you feel so when you were trying to connect with kids during the pandemic or that first, part of the pandemic, it was through the mechanism of trying to be this social worker.
Yeah.
And I imagine a huge part of that, I would think many social workers would say the most important part of that is that direct contact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that still the capacity, even though you're not we're both not at the same school, but wherever you are now in your line of work, are you doing the same work?
Yeah.
And is it still to some degree that distance?
No, I'm face to face every day. Every day face to face.
So that's not an issue now.
No.
The time where you had to still navigate that with the distance, what were some of the tools or things you tried to pull on at least to keep connected at all? I can only imagine.
I guess I would just go off I would make daily phone calls. Yeah. That was probably the the most I was able to do. Sometimes I would do home visits, but even so, it was that still early COVID pandemic.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't know how
You didn't really
close.
know what's going on. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Were families like seemingly more receptive to like the occasional, at least like home visit? Like, did they feel like their even child were getting something more out of at least just seeing a face from the school?
Definitely. It was one student I saw in particular, and his mom was so appreciative. He was so happy that I just came out just to check on him.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really made a difference just because, he was a kid who had some troubles and then progressed. And, I believe he's doing well right now.
Now, you know what? A big thing that, and this is just, I thought of this looking over the list of things that some of the audience from like social media, wanted me to address or talk about on the show. One of them being like successful living. So when I saw that word, right, I was thinking of like your role in like working with kids, helping kids continue to be successful, right? That's a very integral part of the work you do when you're in the building with the, in the school, right? But then it made me think about like us as like adults, like grown-ups doing day-to-day life during the pandemic. How maybe like things that used to be helpful or worked or was part of our like tool belt when it came to like successful living, whether that was going to the gym or doing certain things with other people, that was now suddenly paused.
Yep.
How like did that, like, I know how it impacted your work because it was some of the same ways it impacted my work, but how did that impact your personal life, like the pandemic, like day to day, and your attempt or pursuit of living a successful life day to day, like the things that you typically would do to pour into you to help you? Like, did that shift at all or change any of that, like the pandemic, or put it on hold?
I don't think it put anything on hold. It just gave me more time to do different things. So it gave me more time to fix things around the house. It gave me more time to look at different avenues to make money. It gave me more time just to, breathe and just take a step back and really put my life on pause. I had a tragedy in 2017, and I just always felt like I haven't had actually time to just sit, regardless of like if I have a summer break or anything like that.
Yeah.
That pandemic gave me just 5 months of just freedom. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't do this. So it just gave me time to talk to my wife, just think about our future, just gave me time to, de-stress about everything that has happened in the past couple of years. So as much as, it was definitely something that was it was chaotic, but at least for me personally, I was able to,
it was a needed pause.
It was a needed pause. It was definitely a needed pause.
So with the needed pause thing, one thing that I found that was really kind of sticky was there was like this needed pause for me, but I still had to navigate the other adult human in my house, right? Because I think for a lot of at least like couples or people who are living together with someone, what we might have expected or looked forward to or looked at as like the silver lining in this like, horrible thing across the world, this pandemic occurring, like, okay, now I'll get some time to myself, or now I'll get this, like, right? It was kind of this weird thing that you had to like navigate, because now that other person might have been looking at this, situation the same way, like, now they can get time for themselves as well, but also this idea like now there can be more time for us, right? And I don't think I really like expected as much as that. Obviously I knew it was gonna happen, like we live together, like here, right? But I didn't realize how important it was for me to kind of zero in on that and pay attention to that, really catch or just even have like the discussion with my wife, the other person I'm like doing life with, to go, hey, so like what do you see this situation that our world is facing, that we're facing, how do you see it like impacting us. Like, okay, I can see how it's impacting me. Like, my plan is to, you know what, the things that I really needed to kind of zero in on, or maybe focus or take a break and like, maybe look inward and work on me, maybe. Um, and after having a discussion, because, me and my wife were big advocates for therapy. So we, do marriage therapy together. It was healthy for us to at least have the talk, for me to see that, you know what, a large part of this time with her being sent home from work, working from home, and me being home, she envisioned, well, honey, I figured this would be a time for us to do more things together and spend time. And I was like, wow, that's great. I love that. I think at the onset, though, I was only looking at it through the direction of me. Like, how is it immediately affecting me and what I can get done, what I can get accomplished? For you, I think you were living with your wife at the time.
We just had moved in together in February.
Oh,
a month
wow.
before the pandemic happened.
That had to be crazy.
A month before. So we were still like fixing floors and fixing the bathroom roof.
Wow.
So I had to put some of that on pause because couldn't have people coming in and out of the
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
But
So, well, see, that's kind of a unique difference. Is like, this is the first time you guys are actually coming together.
mhm.
And so some would argue or could say, well, then the pandemic hits, boom, kind of keeps you in front of each other or in the house together for a longer time. But because it's like kind of this first time you guys are just coming together, it might have actually been like kind of like this honeymoon phase, like beneficial thing where it was like all beautiful rainbows every day. Like, oh my God, my love, I get to wake up and see you every day. Right. Versus another couple who we've already been living together for years, whatever. And then this pandemic hits and like, oh my God, I got to like wake up and see this person every day and be stuck in the house. Like, what was that like for you? Was it a unique difference because it was the first time you guys had just moved in, or was it more aggravating?
I don't think it was a unique difference because she was living with me and I was living with a roommate before. This was just our own space now.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
we've been in the
Gotcha.
same space together.
Yes.
And the pandemic happened, so now she's spoiled. now she's spoiled. I was home for 6 months, not having to do anything. Now that I'm off doing extra things with different work and everything, now it's like, oh, I wish the pandemic happened again.
I wish you got another pandemic.
Exactly. So like it was really good, but then also spoiled her because it's not an expectation. That having my time 24/7 is not going to happen. And it's been hard for her to break from that idea.
Yeah. But that's not like typical. This is not a normal.
Exactly.
That's not normal. Yeah. For people to, I don't want to use the word have access to each other. Like that's not a good word. But it's not normal for people. I would even dare to say it's not healthy for people to just be stuck in front of each other for 24 hours a day. Like,
absolutely.
I'm a big, like, my wife and I are very transparent in our relationship. We are honest with each other. We see the benefit when she goes off with her girls or has a kid and is gone for like 4 hours and I'm home and I'm like, I bet this is going to be my alone time. Like, you need that. I think people who try to demonize that really aren't being honest with themselves. Like, that's not a bad thing. If you're listening out there, if you hear your man tell you, I need some alone time, I think obviously delivery is everything.
Absolutely.
How you say what you say.
Of course.
But I think when you look at it, I think women as well could appreciate having their personal time away from even the person you're madly in love with. Like, it's a good thing.
You don't want to be on top of them.
No, that's totally a good thing. So successful living, so the audience want us to talk about some successful living or, advice in the way of successful living. I think it's probably more important, that much more important of an idea to discuss, probably given the context that we're living in now, is like navigating, well, how do I even approach the idea of successful living when everything's shut down? And what I would argue is, or when, many things have opened up, but when life has changed. So even with things opening up, I always would say, I don't think things will ever be the same. Things might have opened back up, but I think our world that we live in is forever changed.
Absolutely.
It's discovering a new normal. Okay. So things are not back to normal. Things are a new normal. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about successful living, I actually like to think having a new normal that might point us all maybe more so back to inside our home, back to a more uh, paying attention maybe to our loved ones as a result of the pandemic, people who've passed away that we've lost, children who are now, from time to time because of maybe they're quarantining from school, being in the home doing their work. So I think parents have had a new opportunity to practice successful living and successful parenting because now that child is in front of them. They can see more of what they're doing in school. Um, and as it pertains to relationships, definitely, right? Like it highlights that much more how important and intentionality is probably an accurate word. How intentional I have to be at successful living. And I'm taking that term living and using it broadly to say it entails successful living, is successful parenting, successful relationships, everything that life entails, doing it successfully. Um, what's been like a thing for you that you've learned or picked up as like a tool on your like utility belt, so to speak, as a result of the pandemic or during this pandemic, where now in our new normal, you've seen be beneficial to whether it's your intimate relationships or your relationships outside the house?
I would say just I think it's brought people to be more creative where you were limited
Definitely
to do certain things. You had to, you know, go back to courting a little bit
yeah,
and being spontaneous and making little fun things to be really big. So whether that be going to the beach, making a picnic, a classic rom comedy stuff,
yeah.
was really appreciated because you were limited to go eat places, limited to go
Yeah.
music parks, whatever it may be that you probably did that was normal
Yeah.
before the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
You had to really step up your game and be creative again with it to keep that spark going. Again, you're seeing this same person 24/7. You don't have that same
Facts.
space to go away, so
Mm-hmm.
you're stuck. So now you got to be creative on how can we keep having fun in
You can't
our
do
own space.
you can't do like the kind of, not that people who do this is not that they're being like mindless or whatever, but I think you can't do the typical mindless things like we'll just go to a restaurant or we'll just go to a movie, right? Like they're like one of the first things that come to your mind when it's like, hey, I want to like go out with my girl or my wife or um, excuse me, like you said, you had to be more creative.
Mm-hmm.
You had to actually put some thought into like how can I make this time special when I'm limited.
Absolutely.
Like,
And for instance, I'll give you our wedding. Our wedding was in the pandemic, so we got married in October of 2020. But we
that's crazy.
we had to she was really set on this 2020 date.
Yeah.
So it's 10/10/2020.
Okay.
She was like, we got to get married on there. We got to get married there. I'm like, all right, let's see how it work out. So we start in planning like July of that year, and we got to look for a place to hold a good amount of people. Then we have to look at what places are renting. We got married in October, and we tried to get the heaters, and the heaters were sold out.
Oh my god.
By every restaurant.
Wow.
So we had to think, what's the best next thing? So we went to IKEA and bought like 100 blankets. So for each person there, they had their own blanket.
Wow. Are you kidding?
We had and our friend, luckily, they had just moved to Monroe, so it was there, and they had a lot of they had a lot of land. So we were able to have our wedding there, backyard wedding, and invite the people that were closest and everything that we were going to be there, and it just made us be very creative in a matter of 4 months and really make a wedding happen.
Yeah, it had to be that much more special, I would think.
Absolutely.
Like that was because I heard about a ton of people's weddings that just got canceled because it was 2020.
Yep. And
so I'm surprised you guys even still had that.
Yeah, our plan was to have a wedding outside the whole time. We didn't get married in a church. So we had our friend be our minister or ordain us. Yes. And that took like 5 minutes, going on the computer, made her ordained, boom. This whole wedding was planned in 4 months, really quickly. And it was under our budget of what we wanted to spend for it because we had just moved in also that same year. So
facts.
A lot of things moving quickly.
What as far I mean your wife's not here, but I imagine you could speak intellectually to at least a portion of this. What has been, just for the ladies that are listening, what has been something you have observed your wife do that we would say could be a part of like her equation, for trying to pursue successful living for her just as a female individual separate from you? Like, what has been something you've watched her pick up or implement in this, last 2 years of this pandemic that we've been in?
I would say that she went back to school. She chose to go back to school. She already has her master's, but she's going back for another certificate where she can have her own private practice, so she can be her own boss. And being the pandemic made her just want to be more independent, not have to worry and report to people. Just she can have her own schedule. She can have the pandemic schedule, go to work, and then go back home. Or take a week off and then go back to work.
Wow.
So it made her be more creative and more, independent and want to be in that position to be her own boss.
The pandemic actually marked for me just this past October where I freaking finished my bachelor's degree. I was done. So the idea of going back to school it hurts me. I don't want to ever do that again. I mean, I might, but I needed a really long break after that. It's been like a really long journey for me. So shout out to all the people who finished, getting through school during this pandemic. I imagine it was really hard as it was for me. And shout out to those who are going back to school and, taking this time to look inward and, personally develop. Amazing. Awesome stuff. I love it. So another question we have from our audience was, and I think this again was, an important thing for many people as a result, again, of like this pandemic, was being able to control, situations as they were unfolding, and the idea of just coping through situations. Now, in my mind, there was a lot of like lack of control, at least of feeling like that as a result of the pandemic, right?
Absolutely.
Like people getting totally blindsided, whether it was with their work, with their impact from like school, with their children. And I think, when we look at this from a mental health standpoint, when you have, or when you're experiencing any time in your life, a heightened degree of lack of control, that could lead to the depression, that could lead to a slew of things that are adverse for us, mentally, emotionally. So there's this like kind of idea of control versus coping. What would you say is the straightforward, kind of simplified as you can make it, difference between the two? Like being able to control a situation, and what does coping with the situation look like?
In my own opinion, I would say, controlling situation is anything that you can manipulate very quickly to where you want us to be. Almost like being in a dream. If you think about it in a dream, you can change it. You're in control of what actually is happening.
Yeah.
Versus coping, you are stuck in this situation. How can I turn lemon into lemonade? How can I make the best thing with the situation I have right now? Almost thinking, you're MacGyver. You see all these tools, and you got to make a parachute out of a slingshot,
a stick of gum,
and a garbage bag. And how can I land safely? You have tools in order to cope situation. You have to have a toolbox, a kit, something.
Yeah.
Because you can't necessarily control it, but you can fix some pieces in order for you to work through it.
I think there was some very telling moments where we all were experiencing the same lack of control. But obviously from, person to person, friend to friend, relationship to relationship, people were coping very differently. Uh, and some, unfortunately weren't able to cope at all. Um, I think when it came to how well someone coped, let's say, I think what's most important to remember is that coping in lieu of having control is not a bad thing. And I think people can sometimes make the mistake of feeling. I think part of what leads it or plays a role into them not being able to cope well or cope as best as possible is because they're stuck on being so angry that they don't have the control.
Mm-hmm.
And then because all your energy is going into focusing on just what you can't control, it's like wasted energy.
Yeah.
Rather than you could be taking the energy you're giving that, you could be putting into ways I could be MacGyvering or making the lemonade out of the lemons. I could if I put a little bit of the same energy I'm putting into throwing the tantrum or being pissed off about what I can't control anyway, and put into ways I can make this lemonade taste banging, right? It'd be a beautiful thing still.
And that's the thing. People, when they feel like they can't control it, they see that red. They don't know how to, bring yourself back down where you can. Okay, look, I'm mad. I feel this. I understand how I feel, but how can I change?
Yes.
Or work through how I'm feeling to get to where I need to get. Well, people aren't built with a dysregulation button that you could just turn off.
Yes.
You have to work, and you have to be put in different situations that make you uncomfortable so that you can actually learn these things. If you're just given your whole life on a silver spoon, you are never going to be able to hear the word no. You're never going to be able to cope with a rejection of some sort or not being able to get something. Because that's your life. You need stress. You need negative stress because sometimes people are grown out of negative stress.
Yes.
When you throw soil, you can grow out of it. Mm-hmm. But you have to be patient, be able to learn, and be able to want to be in a negative situation or uncomfortable situation for you to better yourself in the long run.
I think of it like when somebody's like going to the gym and they want to grow muscle, right? Like lifting the weight that is light and easy to lift. Like there's this plateau, right? How they talk about when you're working out and going to the gym. Like I hear personal trainers talk about like people reaching a plateau and then they wonder how come their muscle isn't growing, but so it grows to a certain amount or they gain certain muscle and then they can't seem to break past that. And it's because you have to increase the stress. Like whatever you've been doing, your body has eventually now adapted to that. So now that's the new normal. And as long as you're operating at what's the normal, there's no growth coming from that. We take the stress, we take the thing that we're not used to, and we use it as an opportunity to grow from there. Absolutely. I think when you have control over the situation, there's a benefit to that, obviously, right? That we all enjoy, but then it's a built-in drawback, right? As long as you are in control, the other things that stimulate growth are not being activated. Exactly. Right? Because I'm in control. I'm running the show. And I think for all of us, the pandemic really leveled, like, we talk about, when it comes to like race and culture, inequality and things like that. I think the pandemic in a large way for just specific areas, not all of life, but really leveled the ground so that I don't care what race or culture you were, we were experiencing degrees of lack of control like never before. Like everybody, from the guy who, is driving the Benz Mercedes to work every day to the corporate office to the person who's just a school teacher. And like everything's shut down for all of you. Yeah. Like, all of you are being sent home. People were getting laid off. I don't care who you were. You know what I mean? Like that was something that everybody was experiencing, this stressor. And now it was going to come to the time of, okay, was this going to be a moment of growth for me? Or was this going to be a moment where, because I've had it so easy and had so much control so long, I'm going to put my energy in throwing the tantrum. I'm going to be the Karen, right? Perfect example, right? He's like, the Karen is the one who's like, no, I only operate and can exist when I have control. I don't know how to respond to when I don't have that.
And you can see that throughout the pandemic. For certain people, things got worse. People were drinking left and right. There were a lot of domestic abuse cases because now you're stuck at home and you can't talk to this person, so you just lash out all that anger.
Exactly.
There was a lot of negatives because people weren't built with the dysregulation skills to, deal with stress.
They weren't built to adapt.
Exactly.
I mean, like that's the biggest drawback you have when you have a certain degree of, I guess what we could call cushion through, day-to-day life, or how you, worded earlier, whether it's the silver spoon or whatever, you know what I mean? It doesn't prepare you to be able to adapt and overcome. Yeah, that's comfortable is the enemy of growth, ladies and gentlemen. Take that away. Write that. Meditate on that. Chew on that for a little bit. Yeah, comfortability is the enemy of growth. It sounds like a hashtag or something, or a book, or I don't know.
Patent it.
Nah. I got too many already, like T-shirts and like hashtags. I got to be working on already. It'll be on the long list. But to the point that it relates to at least another topic or point that our audience wanted to talk about in the show was when it pertains to like the relational piece. You said you and your wife, you guys moved in together at the house that was going to be yours. Like you've already experienced living there before that, but this was going to be the house that was going to be yours, going into marriage. Was it one of those things? I haven't had a chance to meet your wife personally, but was it one of those things where you had certain things already previous to kind of coming together in this space? So like now put the pandemic aside, like as for all intents and purposes, whatever it would have or would not have done to your relationship. But that aside, did you already have kind of the tools necessary, you feel, that would be required to come together with someone and like in someone's personal space, like now living together? Do you think you came to this relationship with those tools already in hand? Or for you, was it one of those things where as a result of coming together, I learned the tools? Because some people do it. I would call that, it happens, but I would call that working backwards. Like some people say, hey, we use, like for instance, like the woman who says, I wanted us to have a kid because I thought it would bring us closer together, right? So we do something, not with the tools necessary prior to, but we do it because we think it's going to equip us. For you, like just with the coming together and each other's personal space, was that something that you had like already the tools to make work, or you kind of developed some more of those tools afterward?
I think we already had some tools already in set. Because we had worked together previously, so we were already in each other's spaces for a good amount of time.
Now, just not to cut you off, what does she do for work? Like, what's her line of?
She's an academic. She's an academic counselor at Post University right now. Before, when we met originally, she was a clinician.
Oh, okay.
At a nonprofit.
So that's a benefit. That you guys are both kind of in the like human service, therapeutic.
She does the academic side. I do the psychological mind stuff.
So that's a plus.
It is. It definitely is. So she understands me if I come home and I have a bad day. She just understands like, oh, it's been a bad day. There's been a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Because we sat through it. We've been on long cases where we got paperwork months behind and we got to figure out some way to get it done.
Absolutely.
So we already had some of these tools of being in each other's space and when to give each other space. I think in any relationship, communication is just an ongoing thing. Reading each other's body language, understanding the tone, understanding just those in between, those things in between of what she says are like, maybe she meant
between the
something
lines.
exactly. So but that's just an ongoing growth thing. I feel like in any relationship, you continue to learn their language of love or their language of communicating on what they need or what they want you to think they need or want.
Or what you think they want you to think they think they need.
Exactly.
Would you say you're a person who believes in this idea of soulmates? Do you think soulmates exist for people before they meet them, or do you think soulmates are an idea or something that's like that's developed once you meet the right person, then you become soulmates?
That's a tricky question because what is a soulmate? I think.
Okay, that's fair. So first, let's have a working definition.
What
is a soulmate?
What's technically a soulmate?
I don't even think I've actually thought of that. I think I just assume a soulmate is anybody that I got it. To me, a soulmate is someone who the typical or normal work it takes that to go into understanding a person, being compassionate, being caring, it comes effortlessly, like almost effortlessly. Like it's so easy. I think that's at least one characteristic of a soulmate. Is we know doing relationship with people, because we're all different, come from different backgrounds, is hard work. But I think when you meet that person where it seems almost effortlessly, and I intentionally use almost, right, because nothing's perfect, but when it just seems just so much easier, I think that's a characteristic of a soulmate. What's your definition of a soulmate?
I just think my definition of soulmate is someone who there's just a born connection. And with that born connection, we may just walk past each other and never know who each other are, but there was some feeling in between us when we walked that we knew who each other were. Now, that doesn't mean a past life where, we were lovers, spouses. It just means we had a connection. And I think that's what a soulmate is. I think a soulmate are people who I've had connections with, in life, and we are just, entwined somehow through our spirits or anything like that. That's what a soulmate to me is. My wife, obviously, she's on top of the soulmate pyramid, whatever. But I feel that it was easy for me to fall for her because I already fell for her. I feel like it's easy for me to be your friend because we were already friends. This is just a continuous cycle. We're just in a different body. So to me, I think soulmates are just people who we've connected with, and we just don't recognize yet.
So you believe your wife is your soulmate?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say, in your opinion, that every, let's say, marriage that's lasted really, really long until one of the people died, so those marriages that are 50, 60 years or whatever, would you say all long marriages like that were people who must have been soulmates? Or do you think people end up somehow figuring it out that long? Even if they're not soulmates, there's hope for them to be able to be married that long until they die, like for decades and decades.
I feel like people figure it out. I feel like if you care enough for someone that you didn't think that was your first choice, that you work for what you really want. You're not always going to get that person that may be your soulmate just because of timing may be different. Situations may not be that case. You don't want to step on anyone's toes, and neither does this person. So, you see someone that you can really envision your life with, and you make it work no matter what. Because, again, they may not be your first choice, but that may be the right choice for you.
So basically, if you're someone listening out there and you don't feel like you're in a relationship with the person that's your soulmate, it's not a death sentence.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not like, God dang, I'm effed up.
No,
I gotta find.
You can have a marriage for 80 years with
Yeah.
someone that maybe wasn't your soulmate, but you guys just have good chemistry and you guys worked. Worked for it to happen.
Well, I think it's work. I think that's a really good point you mentioned, is that it's work, right? And I think it's work regardless, right? Because it's not that even yourself, you said like you feel like you're married to your soulmate, right? That doesn't mean it's void of work.
No.
Right? Like we would wish, I love that I would wish the magic was that amazing and powerful that it was like, hey, if you find the right one, this thing is going to be perfect,
easy, no arguments, nothing.
Nah, it doesn't work like that. It is work. So even if you're somebody who believes in soulmates or not, the good news is that guess what? Whether you believe in it or not, or feel like you found your soulmate or not, everybody's got the same work. It's hard work. You have to actually want to be in the relationship. You actually have to be, I would say, courageous enough. I think being married to someone committed like that lifelong is a brave thing. Like, this is your life, basically putting it in the hands or over to someone else to have extreme influence, right? Like, you're giving that person that degree of you, you're being that vulnerable with another person. And that's going to take work no matter what you are, if you're soulmates or not, if you believe in it or not, because we're different people. We're different human beings. Like, we're raised differently. We've had different life experiences, a mental, emotional, whether it's trauma, traumatic experience, lack of, traumatic experience, whatever it is, we're just that different. So it's going to be work. It's going to be work. I would say, when it comes to just believing, if, as far as soulmates go, if another mate meant for you simply just exist, or is soulmates more of something that develops in relationship? I think I weigh on more of the side of, I think it's something that develops in a relationship. And I say that because of this. I thought about this a little bit beforehand. So obviously I had kind of like the show notes a little ahead of time before you did, right? Being the astute social worker he is, he probably would have came here with some cited references and something.
I would have jotted something down.
But the reason I think having like a person, and this is like kind of hinges off of my faith-based belief, me being a Christian, a Bible reader. I think for there to be only one other person set aside meant for me, I think that would be on the part of God. That would be too controlling. And I think God gives us free will. That's what makes us unique as humans, creatures, right? Mm-hmm. I think what would be, or what is, because I believe this, I think what is more beautiful is the ability to meet someone that, how you said, you can learn mutual respect, vulnerability, transparency with, and then over time you become like how they teach in the Bible, right? Like to become one flesh, right? You become soulmates. You become mated at the soul to the degree, to the length, to the depth of which you've consistently, time after time again in your relationship, have made yourselves vulnerable to one another. Because I think I've heard at least other people say this, is that they felt that at some point they crossed paths with their soulmate. Like not just like literally just walked past them, but actually had a relationship and then lost them. And in my mind, I would say that only happens because, again, whether you thought that person was the one meant for you from the beginning of time or not, right? If you don't have or learn that mutual, daily, consistent vulnerability, mutual respect, right? Whether they were designed for you or not, that works against relationships. Okay. So again, good news, right? For those who are listening, if you feel like, again, you found the right person or you didn't find the person you think is your soulmate, right? Maybe you're somebody that believes in soulmates, right? I think if you have at least those fundamental things, you have the baseline. We have mutual respect, mutual vulnerability, like vulnerability is reciprocated, transparency is reciprocated, honesty, right? That can happen. And I think people only, I mean, I didn't state what I thought was the obvious, right? Is, you have just attraction. I mean, I think you only end up in a relationship at all if you're attracted, right? So like, I don't think you look ugly. I don't think those work. Yeah. I don't think my wife, she could be amazing in all the way she is, but she looked ugly. I mean, I wouldn't have said hi.
Because that's the first thing we see. That's what it is.
Let's just keep it real.
That's honest.
Yeah. So you obviously have attraction.
I mean, my wife, the first time she saw me, she was like, I did not think he was cute. It was the way my hair was. I had the S curls in one day, and she was like,
you didn't have the shape up. You wasn't the fresh.
I thought I had the shape up.
You thought I had the shape up? I guess not.
But she was like, you was not.
It wasn't it. It wasn't it. Cute. How did you dress when she first saw you? Did you have like the regular work gear on, or you was like?
Yeah, I had like a polo, some khakis. she just was not feeling the hair.
Wow. And then you switched the hair up, and then she was like,
yeah.
You were like an angel coming from the clouds, descending.
A little bit. I mean, she was like, when we hung out, that's when you was cool. I ignored the hair.
I ignored the hair. Not that the hair wasn't any less trash to me. It's just that I ignored it because we hung out and we actually, that's funny. So at the end of every episode, right, we do this thing where, because it's called free lunch, lunch being used as like a metaphor. Like lunch is edifying for the body, right? We like to have something edifying for the soul. So it's free lunch, free food for the soul, right? So we end with something that's edifying for the listeners that we want them to take away from the episode. What is something, like, considering everything we like discussed, or something we haven't discussed, maybe something that just popped in your mind and you wanted to be able to share that you want to leave the people with?
I would say that invite uncomfortable situations. That will benefit you in the long run. When you are able to get outside your comfort zone, when you are able to feel uneasy, that's you growing. That feeling you get, that tingly feeling that makes you feel nervous, that's you growing. That's you trying something new. That's you evolving to a greater level that you can be.
Awesome. I love it. I don't even have a follow-up bar to drop after that. Yo, thank you so much, Travis, for coming, man.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Hey, y'all heard it from the man, Travis Rose, y'all. It's free lunch, free food for your soul. Peace.